Today we are going to quickly talk about documenting your code, why we want to do it, and what are the best practices for documenting your code. Let's first talk about why. There's several reasons why we want to document code. Number one, it's a great way as we're writing code to keep track of what's going on, using that white space between methods to add a comment about what you're trying to do as you go through and write a document. When we're in these small programs, it's not a big deal to keep track of everything that's going on, but as we get to bigger and bigger projects, keeping track of the things that you're trying to do is important and a great way to signify what's going on. Also, when you're working in a team, as we start to work with other programmers, it's an important tool for communicating what you are trying to do as a programmer in a piece of code as someone else comes in and tries to work on it. The third real reason is that we want to document the code for later use, either from ourselves or someone else. Perhaps we leave a project for a while and we want to come back to it. We want to know what's going on, and we want other people to know what is going on. And documentation can also be really good for setting up your program. We're going to talk about pre and post conditions and why that is a valuable tool when creating and working with your code. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this really quick. So documenting and commenting there's two M's in commenting your code. Okay, so we know we can remember that two slashes is going to be our single line comment. So this can be put anywhere. In fact, you can write, let's say I have a line, int x equals 5, on the same line. So if I have a line that's extending here, on the same line, I can write a comment directly after this line of code and say x is my vertical value. Perhaps we're writing some program that tracks x, y, and z, right? So x is the vertical value. And in this way, you can have the comment actually on the same line that you're working on, giving you a tool to keep track in the middle of what's going on in your code. So that's a single line comment. Then we also have multi-line comments. And that is a / followed by an asterisk. And actually, general convention is to use 2 asterisks, which indicates Java documentation. And in order to end our multi-line comment, we need to end, generally speaking, it is 2 asterisks followed by a /. Again, you only need the 1 asterisk in each of these cases, but general convention is to use 2. Now, inside of our multi-line comment, these are used for indicating what's going on in a block of code. So this is going to help us usually for blocks of code. So this is going to explain what you're doing in a large block of code. And you can do something that is part of Java documentation. So Javadocs is actually its own separate markup language that you can put special things inside of these code blocks that will automatically generate the documentation that we often see in Java programs. So we can do things, there's 2 that are really useful, and one is we signify things with an @ symbol. So we say @param, and then we can define what a parameter for a method is. So then over here we say this is some parameter. And we define that so that the person coming after us or ourselves can use that. And then we also have the @return. So what this returns. Method returns. And we can also define preconditions and postconditions. So what are these things? Okay, we're familiar with parameters and returns, but what about preconditions and postconditions? So this is how things should be before a method or code block runs. How things need to be or are before a method runs. And postconditions are what happens afterwards. So what happens after it's run? It has run. Now, this can be not just the return method, but perhaps side effects that happen, things that print to the screen. It doesn't necessarily have to be what just is returned in a postcondition. A precondition can include things like assume well-formatted data, or assume that the data is not well-formatted and we need to take care of that, which is more information than what just the parameter has. Maybe we need to do some extra checks, or maybe those checks have already been done for us and we don't need to repeat ourselves by doing those checks again. Preconditions and postconditions. Why is this important? So these are Javadocs here. So pre and post conditions. Why are these an important tool? Well, there's two main reasons. The first main reason we care about pre and post conditions. Pre and post conditions. So why do we care? Number one, and this is really the most important thing. This is how the AP FRQs are written. Okay, this is huge, right? Put a giant star in your notes. This is how we are going to write our FRQs in the AP exam. They're going to give you preconditions. Here's all the things that you're going to get. Here's how it's formatted. Here's how it's going to be laid out for you, what you need to do with that information. And then the post condition. Here's the outputs. Sometimes it might be a return. Sometimes it might be a print line statement. Those are different outcomes. Those are different post conditions. Even though your logic may be right, your output might be different. Your post condition might be wrong. So we need to pay close attention to pre and post conditions on the AP exam. What are you being given and what is it actually asking you to do? Okay, and the other reason that this is an important tool and why the AP does this is this is how code is developed. It might not seem like it right now, but when you get into a larger coding project, let's say you're working at Google, and Google wants to build in a new feature inside of their search engine. Well, they've already got this huge chunk of code in their search engine, and they want to add a new little button, right? And they already know a bunch of information, and they want it to have a certain behavior. Well, that's pre and post conditions. They know what their code can do right now. They know the data that they have access to. They know how it's formatted, and they know what they want to do. They know what the post condition is. And so if you, as a junior developer at, say, Google, you are going to create this new tool for them. You're going to take that precondition of what you know is there, and you're going to build out that post condition, what they want as a behavior from that new button, from that new tool, from that new line of code or set of methods that you are doing. So we're learning this because it is a tool for building in new pieces of information into existing code bases, which is most of the work of programmers these days. Most programmers aren't building a brand new piece of code from scratch from a blank sheet of paper. Most of the time, you're plugging in something into an already existing, sometimes thousands, millions of lines of code that already exist, and you need to plug something in that works, taking the pre and post conditions into account for your program. Okay, that is everything on Java documentation. I'll see you guys in the next one.